Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. If you can solve this puzzle, you are at least a 1500 plus rated player. We are continuing in our series. This is puzzle number 6. It is white to play, and the goal is to checkmate in 3 moves. White to play. Pause the video now. As always, I want these puzzle videos to be educational and instructive. Otherwise, you could solve 1008 puzzles on your own. So before we get started, I like to give credit where credit is due. So I want to give a quick shout out to Roger, aka Waldo Wizard, on the channel for sending this over. Appreciate that very much. I thought it was a fascinating puzzle. It actually took me several minutes to get this. And I think it's a great exercise in visual and calculation skills, trying to move these pieces in your mind. And it's quite tricky. So if you still haven't been able to solve it, I'll give you a couple of hints. We are continuing with our theme of forcing moves. And this one is going to involve a combination of the first one and the last one on that list on your right. So it's going to involve checks and controlling a file or rank. And the second hint that I can give you is think under promotion. Okay, so with those 2 hints, if you'd like a second shot at it, go ahead and pause the video. As usual, one of the best ways to solve a tricky puzzle like this is simply using process of elimination. As a general practice, I like to take about 3.895 milliseconds and take a look at this bottom left-hand corner. If it's the A1 square, then white's pawns are going up the board. If this is the H8 square, then it's the other thing. Okay, so when you look at this, obviously we have several different checking moves. We could promote here with a check, promote here with a check, promote here with a check. We need to understand and agree that this is a completely symmetrical position as far as the location of the pieces. So if you start ruling out checks with the promotion of the G pawn, then that will also rule out those same exact promotions and checks with the C pawn. So really you're kind of like looking at one side of the board, either here and here, or you're looking at perhaps the right side of the board. Okay. So the first thing that I looked at here was we got a check here, and a check here. So if we start with promoting the G pawn to a queen, that's check. So what are the options for black? They can either take the F6 pawn, they can scoot over to D7, or they can capture the D6 pawn. And we'll take a look at each of these. So if the black king takes on F6, well, we have the very, very clever under promotion to a knight, and that is
game over.
Yikes. Okay, so the black king cannot do that. That would be a mate in 2. If the king tries to go to D7, then there are a few different mate in 2s from here. Probably the easiest is just to promote the C pawn with the check, and then that forces the king to take on D6. And then from here, there's a whole bunch of mate in 1s. Take your pick. That's a mate, that's a mate, that's a mate, that's a mate. You could under promote to a knight. So black cannot do that. So that leaves us with king takes D6. And this is where I personally probably spent the bulk of my time trying to solve the puzzle. And I couldn't find anything because there is nothing here. And the issue is it's very difficult for white to prevent the king from escaping to the left side of the board. If we promoted the G pawn, if you promoted the C pawn, and it'd be the mirror image on the opposite side. But what can white try here? Well, what checking moves do we have? If you tried something like queen to D5, then the king just takes the C pawn. And we have no meaningful checks with this queen, tons of squares that the king could go to. This doesn't do anything. If you under promote to a knight, then the king can go to the back rank, B6 or whatever. So queen D5 doesn't do the job. Well, what else can we try? Well, what about promoting the C pawn? Well, if you promote to a queen, that's actually stalemate. The king has no legal moves. And you'll probably think, aha, let's under promote to a rook. This looks very promising. That forces the king to D7, but there is no mate in 1 here. Believe it or not, it looks like there should be, but there's not. We have no meaningful check with the rook. That's nothing. If you check here, we just go to the C file. If you go queen to D5, then you just drop your rook. If you give a check on D8, the king hides on E6, and you can't promote to anything. The only way to check the king diagonally is to promote with a bishop or a queen, and either one of those, the king just goes to D6. So unfortunately, there is no mate in 1 from this particular position. So that doesn't work. What else can we try? Well, I was thinking, how do we restrict the king from going over here? Well, let's try queen B8. That doesn't work because the king just goes right back where it was. Same thing for something like queen G3 check. King just goes right back where it was. You may think, aha, what about queen C4? That restricts the king. It does. That forces the king up the board. But we have no mate in one here. Any promotion with the E pawn, the king just takes it. And if you promote the C pawn, then the king goes back to D6. And that would be a mate in 4. So that doesn't work. What else can we try? So after the king takes on D6, what if we play something like queen to C8? Well, once again, the king is escaping on these dark squares. What if we give a check on D8? Well, again, the king is escaping. Goes down to here, and then there's nothing. I mean, the king's going to escape a whole bunch of different squares. So unfortunately, that leaves us to the conclusion. There's one more try after king takes D6. You could try to under promote to a knight. That does nothing. The king is escaping. And that leads us to the conclusion that unfortunately, promoting this pawn to a queen does not work. So if promoting the G pawn to a queen does not work, and we have a symmetrical mirror image position, promoting the C pawn to the queen will not work either. Okay, so what if we under promote to a bishop here? Does that work? Well, no, the king is still going to take on d6, and this is even worse because now we can't even restrict the king with moves like this with the queen, or we can't even give a check on a dark square. So this leads to nothing. The only checking move we have in this spot is to actually under promote one of these pawns to a knight, and clearly that will not do the trick. What if we under promote to a knight? Well, several ways that black could get out of this. They could just simply go to f7 and attack the knight, and if you give a check here, we go there. I mean, this is, all kinds of squares. If you give a check here, the king just takes it. So clearly under promoting to a knight will also not work. Okay, so what about under promoting one of these wing pawns to a rook? This is a little bit more promising. Now, black only has one move here. If they go to either of these light squares, it will be a mate in 3. So if they go to f7, now we promote to a queen. King has to take on f6, and now we have a mate here a bunch of different ways. That's just one example. So black actually cannot do that. Going back to the rook under promotion, if black takes the f6 pawn, this actually doesn't work either. White has a very, very sneaky move here. They can actually promote this to a bishop, and it's not stalemate, and that forces the king to go to e6. And now we have the beautiful rook g6, and that is actually a mate in 3. However, on the rook under promotion, we have this same annoying move. Black can just take on d6, and there is no mate in 2 from this spot. If you promote the c pawn to a queen, we already saw something very similar. With the queen being here, it's the same thing. The king has no legal squares to go to. That's a stalemate. If you under promote this one to a rook, well, the king has a couple of different squares it could go to. Either one of these light squares is fine. E6 is fine. If you give a check there, I go back, or go here to f7. So there's nothing there. So if you try again, you try to under promote to a knight, there's just nothing there. King's escaping. So unfortunately, that also leads us to the conclusion that this puzzle cannot be solved by pushing and promoting either of the C or G wing pawns. Therefore, the first move in the correct solution to this puzzle is we're actually going to promote the G pawn to a pawn. We can rule out any king move. Obviously, that's not going to do us any good. So that only leaves us with 2 options. We either have to promote the E pawn, or we have to push one of these D or F pawns. We can rule those 2 options out very quickly. Neither of these are going to do any good. If you say you push the F pawn, we just take it. And if you promote the E or the G pawn, then the king will just take it. If you promote to a queen, then we're going here and we're escaping. Pushing here, same thing. So there's nothing there. So the final conclusion is the only way to solve this puzzle is to push and promote on the E8 square. All right, let's start with the most obvious. We promote to a queen. Guess what black has? This is the same annoying king takes d6. This is perfectly symmetrical, so king taking f6, of course, is also fine for black. There is no mate in 2 from this spot. If you give a check on e7 with the queen, then the king goes to c6, and the king is escaping even if you promote the other pawn on c8. Same thing if the queen comes down to e5 and gives a check, king goes to c6, same exact thing. There's no mate in 1 with the queen, and if you promote on c8, the king is getting to that b6 square. So those don't work. So after king takes on d6, what if we promote the c pawn to a queen? Well, that is stalemate. If you promote this to a rook, that is also stalemate. Promoting this pawn does nothing. We'll just take the pawn. If you under promote this to a knight, that doesn't work. The king has many ways to escape. And if you underpromote this to a bishop, the king is escaping on the dark squares. All right, going all the way back. So that rules out promoting to a queen. Let's try promoting to a rook. Well, we still have king takes on d6, and for all of the reasons that we just mentioned with the queen, all of those same reasons are basically still true. We don't have, obviously, we're not going to be able to mate with just this rook. So if we promote the pawn to c8 to a queen, then once again, this is stalemate. Now, if we underpromote to a rook, it's not stalemate, but the king goes to d7, and then we don't have a checkmate in one here. If you check with the e rook, then we go to e6. If you check with the c rook, then we just go to the c file. And if you give a check on e7, then that drops the other rook. So that means that we cannot promote the e pawn to a rook. All right, guys, we're getting close, I promise. So let's try under promoting the e pawn to a knight. Aha! So we've finally stopped the king from taking either the d or the f6 pawn. But unfortunately, white doesn't have anything here. We just go to one of these light squares. It doesn't matter which one. And white has nothing. We're threatening to take the knight. If you promote the g pawn, then we're running as fast as we can. If you promote the c pawn, we just take that. And there's just nothing here. So lo and behold, the correct first move in solving this puzzle is the astonishing under promotion to a bishop, winner, winner, chicken dinner.
No, I think that's the smart move.
Absolutely, that's a smart move. Now, the king can still take on d6 or f6. And if you promote to a queen, we're back to stalemate. But we have the second amazing under promotion to a rook. And now the last item on our list over there on the right, controlling a file or rank. The rook is controlling the c file, but because we promoted to a bishop and not a queen or a rook, we are purposefully not controlling the entire e file. So the king does have a square on e6. And now we have the same exact variation in that line that we discarded earlier in the video. We have the really cool finishing touch, rook c6. The bishop is controlling the two light squares. The king is controlling these three squares. The pawn is controlling e5. Check on the sixth rank. And that is
Game over.
wow, what a checkmate in 3 puzzle. So please let me know in the comments if you guys were able to solve this. Hey, thanks for watching. If you think these videos are helpful and you would like me to continue posting them, please consider liking and subscribing. Thanks so much, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.